Welcome back everyone with a newborn. I haven't been able to play much poker recently. I played a little bit of the Champions Tournament series and I just started playing on stream again, but I haven't played much cash the last couple of weeks. This vlog footage is going to be from earlier in 2023 from a session I didn't have a chance to make a vlog of. It's a little bit older footage prior to some of the updates I made on the back end, but I still think it's really good content, so I hope that you guys enjoy. I'll probably make another video after this with some highlights from 2023 of hands from sessions that didn't make vlogs as well. Hopefully I can get back on the tables in the near future. At this point in the session, I haven't really played too many notable hands. I've been relatively card dead, and the few hands I have played, I've either taken it down with a c-bet or completely whiffed on the flop. The table decides to incorporate the nit game. For those that are unaware of this game, essentially every player has a button in front of them. You lose this whenever you win a hand. The final player to not have won a hand has to pay a bounty to each other player at the table. Typically we pay $50 per player. So when you're 9-handed, you're paying out 8 other players, so $400. This game is usually added in our rotation to create a lot of action. In this hand, I open up Queen 10 offsuit in the low jack to $60. Salim in the hijack 3-bets to $160. Salim is a very competent, very loose, aggressive player. I expect him to be 3-betting here at a very high frequency, especially when we were playing the nit game, and he's very incentivized to win the hand. Because of that, I decided to exploitatively 4-bet to $400 with my Queen 10 offsuit. Theoretically, I don't think this is something that I would ever really be doing, but I think in this specific spot, I expect to get a lot of folds. I'm clearly wrong as he decides to continue, and we go heads up to the flop with the pot at $835. The flop is the king of spades, king of clubs, 3 of clubs. Overall, I think this is a board that I'm going to have a massive range and nut advantage on. I have all the ace king that he doesn't have, as well as some of the offsuit Broadway King X combos, something like King Jack offsuit and King 10 offsuit that I expect him to fold pre-flop. His range is also going to consist of a lot of pocket pairs, which I do expect will continue at a high frequency on the flop, but will often fold to later aggression on the turn or river. Not going to be using massive sizes in a 4-bet pot as I can get all the money in regardless. I continue here for $200 and he makes the call. Once he makes the call, I expect his range to be primarily pocket pairs. Like I said, he's going to have some King X combos and some flush draws, although I don't think a lot of his suited connected stuff is going to be 3-betting at a very high frequency. So most of his flush draws are going to be ace X or Broadway region. Obviously, it's reduced slightly with the king of clubs out there. He's also going to be continuing with a low frequency of hands like ace queen, ace king, especially if they have backdoors. We go to the turn, which is the ace of clubs. Pretty interesting card. It reduces both of our flush draws dramatically, as I'm going to be 4-betting often with the lower suited ace X combos. And I'm probably not 4-betting too much with the queen jack, Queen 10 style of hands, and more often going to be calling. It also drastically reduces the number of flush draws he has, as he really only has the Broadway region at this point. It's also a very good card for my range, as I am going to be range betting with a lot of ace X combos. He's going to be folding a lot of his ace X combos, except for primarily some of those ace queen hands, and some of the weaker ace X combos with backdoors, although I do not expect him to have too many offsuit combos. And because I think I still have a nut and range advantage, I decided to continue for a large size of $750. He thinks for a while, and eventually he does put in the call. I think when he does make the call here, he's primarily going to have pocket pairs that contain a club. Hands like pocket jacks, pocket 10s, pocket 9s. Like I said, he could still have some of those ace X combos, although I expect most of those to be folding on the flop. He could still be slow playing a king X combo as well, but overall this card should frighten him quite a bit. We go to the river, which is the 6 of hearts. Really doesn't change anything on this board. Because the river doesn't change anything, I think I still have a pretty strong nut advantage here. I'm going to have the pocket aces, the ace king. I think I'm going to have more king X combos than him. I think I would have heard from some of his king X combos as well as some of his flushes at this point. I decided to go all in for my remaining $1,650. Really trying to apply pressure on all of those pocket pairs. He tanks for a long time and ultimately he does flick in the call. I show my busted straight draw and he shows ace jack offsuit, which is a hand that I'm a little bit surprised to see. I think he primarily is going to be folding that pre-flop or on the flop, but it worked out for him here. Very tough call to make. I open up pocket aces from early position to $60. The middle position, button, and straddle all decide to call. We go 4 aces to the flop, which is the 5 of spades, king of clubs, 7 of hearts. Dukter checks, and I decide to continue for a small size of $80. Both Jeff and Dukter make the call. I expect Jeff to be a little bit stronger here with players behind. He's primarily going to have king X combos, but I do think he'll call with some of his pocket pairs once, as a lot of them have backdoors, hands like 8, 6s, 4s. His hands like 7-6 will call as they have backdoor straights and additional equity to make 2 pair trips. Dukter closes the action, but I would expect him to also be relatively tight here, as both myself and Jeff are interested in this pot. Although he might think I'm betting this at a very high frequency, I did open from early position. He's going to have a similar range as Jeff, although I'd expect him to be folding a lot of his pocket pairs here. I'm primarily continuing with king X or middle pairs that have additional equity. We go 3 ways to the turn, and the turn is the 6 of spades. Not a card I like to see with pocket aces, as hands like 7-6 get there. Surprisingly, Dukter decides to lead out for 200 into both of us. He definitely could have a hand that picked up additional equity here, something like the King X of spades, 7X of spades, something like 8-7, pocket eights. But when he's leading into both of us, I would expect him to have a relatively strong range here. That said, with the amount of draws out here, I think pocket aces is probably just too strong to fold. So I do flick in the call, and Jeff makes the fold. We go heads up to the river with the pot at $895, and the river is the Queen of Spades. Again, another bad card for me, as the backdoor flush does come in. And if he did decide to donk bet with a stronger King X combo like King Queen, he's now made 2 pair. Dukter leads out for pot $900. I think he's pretty much saying he has a flush here, so I think his value range is very limited. Although he could be going as wide as a hand like 9-8. I'm not sure how often he'll be doing this with hands like sets or 2 pair, as the backdoor flush did come in and there's a 3 to a straight on the board. Although to be fair, a lot of those hands aren't really in my range at too high of a frequency, and it's pretty hard to have a flush when it comes runner. On this run out, he's showed a lot of interest multi-way. I probably should just be folding my hand versus any large sizing. It did misread in the moment, and I did think he bet a little bit smaller than this. I thought he bet about 600 or 700, but I should have verified. Regardless, even versus that size, my hand's probably just going to be a fold. I did flick in the call this time, and he shows me the bad news with the 9-7 of spades. I picked up the combo draw on the turn with the pair, and then rivered the flush, and I give him max value with my pocket aces. In this hand, I open up ace-10 offsuit from the hijack to $60. Salim calls in the cutoff, Felt calls on the button, and Cal calls in the big blind, and we go 4 ways to the flop with the pot at $265. The flop gives me top pair with the 10 of hearts, 8 of hearts, 2 of spades. A relatively wet board, and I have a pretty vulnerable hand, and I decide to continue for $150 when it's checked to me. Salim min raises it to $300, and the other 2 players fold. I think Salim's going to be min raising here at some frequency with some of his sets, although I would expect him to go larger most of the time. Straight draws like Jack 9, Queen Jack, and then a lot of flush draws here. Could also have a worse 10x combo than me, something like King 10, possibly as weak as Queen 10. Regardless versus the size, ace 10 is just going to be a pure continue. I'm beating all of his draws, and I'm beating some of his value. I make the call, and we go heads up to the turn with the pot at $865, and the turn is the ace of hearts, giving me top 2 pair, but also completing a lot of his flush draws. So I'm going to be in trouble versus a large portion of his range. I check, and he continues for $300 again. At this point, I'm really only ahead of his straight draws. I'm not sure if he's going to be barreling with some of his 10x combos like King 10, as I do have overpairs to the 10x, ace 10, and flush draws myself. Even though I have top 2 pair, I'm in a very uncomfortable spot. I do think versus the size, I have a mandatory call though, and we'll see a river, and I'll make a decision there. There's also a chance that I always improve to a full house. The river is the king of clubs, bringing in one of his draws, the Queen Jack. At this point, I'm really only beating Jack 9. Some of his straight draws have come in, all of his flush draws have come in. He's going to have sets here as well, although I'm not sure if he's going to triple barrel those. Regardless, I think facing a bet, I probably just have to fold the ace 10 here, as my relative hand strength is very low. I check, and thankfully he decides to check back. I show ace 10 for my 2 pair, and he mucks his hand, and I scoop this $1,500 pot. Find another premium as I look down at pocket kings in middle position, and I open it up to $60. Salim and Felt make the calls in the low jack and hijack. It folds around to the straddle, and he 3-bets to $385. I put in the 4-bet to $900. Both Salim and Felt quickly get out of there, and Cal makes the call. We go heads up to the flop with the pot at $1,935. The flop is the jack of spades, 7 of spades, 3 of clubs. I think I'm going to be ahead here the vast majority of the time. I'm really only losing to pocket jack. I don't expect him to be 3-bet calling with hands like pocket 7s or 3s. He's going to have some ace jack here, some pocket queens, as well as some flush draws I can get value from. I also expect him to call once with hands like pocket 10s or pocket 9s. He checks, and I range bet for $500 using a quarter pot sizing. He makes the call, and we go to the turn, which is the 10 of diamonds. Not the turn card I was looking for, as pocket 10s does get there, but overall not the worst turn card in the deck. This will improve some of his flush draws, as he's going to have hands like ace 10, king queen suited. He'll either pick up a pair or pick up a straight draw. Still expect to get value from his overpairs, his ace jack combo, stuff like that. So when he checks, I decide to shove all in for about half pot, shoving in $1,500. He tanks for a while, but ultimately he does make the call. We decide to run it twice in the 6K pot. The first river is the 7 of diamonds, and the second river is the 9 of hearts. I show pocket kings, he says I'm good, and he mucks, and I scoop both boards. Just a few hands later, Salim opens from under the gun to $70. Cal 3-bets in the cutoff to $225. And it's like deja vu as it folds around to me in the straddle, and I'm once again looking down at pocket kings. And once again, I'm against Cal. I cold 4-bet to $525. Salim gets out of the way, and Cal 5-bets to $1,700. I could just put it in here, but we're incredibly deep, and I think a call is perfectly fine. So I continue with a call. We go heads up to the flop with the pot at $3,500. The flop is the 4 of spades, 8 of hearts, jack of clubs. I check to Cal, and he shoves all in for about pot for $3,300. Pretty uncomfortable spot, but I don't think I'm in the market to be folding pocket kings here. Still beating some of his value in pocket queens, and he's going to have some bluffs with ace king, although I'm not sure he's going to be potting it too often with that hand. Regardless, I flick in the calling chips, and we decide to once again run it twice in this 10K pot. The first run out is the 6 of hearts, 3 of diamonds, and the second run out is the 8 of clubs, 6 of spades. I immediately showed my pocket kings when we went all in, saying, hey, I have pocket kings against you again in back-to-back hands. And Cal starts tanking for a little bit after seeing both runouts. And you know when you get that uncomfortable feeling like, hey, I have a very strong hand, but this is a spot where my opponent definitely could have a hand like aces. He looks at me and he says, sorry, man, flips over his hand and he says, chop. And he actually has the other 2 pocket kings and gave me the fake slow roll. So overall, pretty happy to see that compared to some of the alternatives. And I split this 10K pot with him. We're down to the final 2 players in the Nick game, myself in the big blind and Salim in the straddle. Multiple players limp, and I decide to overlimp with pocket 5s in the big blind. Salim bumps it up all the way to $200. I think Salim's going to have a very, very wide range here, as we are the final 2 in the Nick game, and he's very aggressive in general. The action folds back around to me, and I think I have a lot of fold equity here with Salim having such a wide range. I decide to go all in with pocket 5s for $1,525, so about 75 big blinds effective. Salim snap calls, so we're either behind or flipping at this point. The flop is the ace of hearts, 9 of hearts, ace of diamonds. The turn is the queen of spades, and the river is the jack of clubs. Can't really see too many hands that we're beating here at this point. Pretty much every overcard hand that he could possibly have has made a pair or better. And obviously all of his pocket pairs are stronger. I'm pretty much hoping he has something like pocket 4s exactly. But I think that's unlikely. He shows us the bad news as he does have king jack of hearts. Pretty much just crushes this entire board. He scoops this 3K pot. Open up pocket 9s to $60. A tighter player 3-bets in the cutoff to $200. Given the stack size in this tighter range, I probably should just be folding pocket 9s here. But I do continue with a call. Go heads up to the flop with the pot at $435. The flop is the ace of hearts, 10 of clubs, 6 of spades. At this point, I'm just folding to any aggression. I check, and he actually decides to check back. Given this player type, I think he's heavily weighted towards hands like pocket kings, pocket queens, and pocket jacks. I would expect all of his stronger ace-x combos to continue here, and I don't expect him to have too many weaker ace-x combos. So it's definitely a board that it seems like he's a little bit afraid of. We go to the turn, which is the jack of hearts. At this point, I think pocket 9s is probably one of the worst hands I possibly have here. And because I know that my opponent's not thrilled with the board texture, I decide to turn pocket 9s into a bluff. I pro bet for $250. I do expect him to call with hands like pocket kings and pocket queens here once when he picks up the gut shot. If he did have a hand like pocket jacks, I expect him to raise at a high frequency. But I still think that he has a middling pair here. We go to the river with the pot at $935, and the river is a 3 of diamonds. At this point, my range consists of a lot of sets, 2 pairs, king queen for the straight, and stronger ace-x combos. Pocket 9s are never good here, and I really want to apply pressure to his pocket kings and pocket queen combos. Possibly a weaker ace-x, all of which I think will fold versus a river shove. I go all in for $900. He tanks for a while, and ultimately he does make the fold. It sounds like he did have a hand like pocket kings or pocket queens, so thankfully my aggression was able to get the fold. Jeff, Benzine, and Duke are all limp. I open up jack 10 of hearts in the small blind to $125. Both Jeff and Duke continue. I expect their range to primarily be made up of suited connected hands, ace-x suited combos, and weaker pocket pairs. I would expect most of their stronger pairs and their stronger Broadway combos to be raising preflop, and I don't expect most of their offsuit Broadways to continue with a limp call. Although they are in position, those hands don't play very well multi-way. We go 3 ways to the flop with the pot at $425. The flop is the 8 of clubs, 8 of hearts, 7 of hearts, giving me the gut shot straight flush draw as well as 2 overcards. Overall, I think this flop does favor my opponents, but I'm going to have some strong hands that continue here. And this hand seems like a very natural candidate to continue with so much equity. I continue for a size of $250. Jeff gets out of the way and Duke makes the call. Duke should be raising a lot of his 8x combos as well as his pocket 7s here. I think his range is mostly going to be made up of weaker pocket pairs, 7x combos, and some flush and straight draws, although some of those will be raising flop as well. We go heads up to the turn, which is the 6 of diamonds. I think this is going to connect with my opponent's range at a pretty high frequency. He's going to pick up a lot of equity with some of his draws. He's going to have a pair plus a straight draw or a pair plus a flush draw at a high frequency. He's going to have hands like 7-6, which although it doesn't improve as an actual hand, does have good blocking properties. Definitely could have a hand like pocket 6s, and I'd be drawing to the 1 out. Overall, I think my opponent has the range and nut advantage. I'm not going to be continuing here at a very high frequency, but but I think I can continue with some high equity hands. I'm going to have some 8x. I do think a lot of my overpairs can continue here as well. As like I said, my opponent's going to be raising a high frequency of their stronger hands on the flop. I continue for a large sizing of $725. Victor tanks for a while and he does make the call. I expect to see folds from a lot of his draws here. He's going to continue with some flush draws, but some of the naked straight draws are going to be folding. He's also going to be folding some of his weaker pocket pairs, but I do expect him to continue with a lot of his draw plus pair combos. We go to the river with the pot at $2,400, and the river is the 8 of diamonds. A very interesting card, as it's very unlikely my opponent has an 8x combo, and I think the pendulum wildly swings across from him having a nut advantage to me having a nut advantage, because now all of the stronger pocket pairs are essentially the nuts here. If he did have a hand like pocket 7s or pocket 6s, he's essentially been counterfeited. And I think given the pre-flop action where we see a limp from him, it's very unlikely that he has any stronger pocket pairs. He possibly has a low frequency of pocket 9s. But outside of quads, the best hand he has is a 7x combo. Because of that, I think I want to apply a lot of pressure with my bluffs. Obviously, Jack High is never really going to be good here at Showdown. I think I can fold out a lot of his weaker full houses. I obviously can fold out some of his stronger flush draws that are just ace, king, or queen high that I'm losing to. I decide to apply as much pressure as possible, and I go all in for $2,700 effective. And Duke goes deep into the tank. He ends up tanking for about 5 minutes and finally flicks in the calling chip. I show my busted straight flush draw, and he shows 10-7 of diamonds for the weaker full house. Although he has a full house in terms of relative strength, it's still pretty weak as I have all these stronger full houses, and I think it's a super tough call to make versus an overbet shove. So good for him, and he scoops this 8K pot. There was one final hand from this session. I accidentally deleted the footage, but I got in my remaining $550 with pocket aces pre-flop. Matt decided to give me action with pocket 5s, and I was drawing essentially dead on the flop as he flopped quads. Not a good end to the session. I definitely got out of line a couple times throughout the session and got punished for it, and unfortunately this was a horrible session for me. I lost about $6,000. As always, I appreciate everyone tuning in. I appreciate all the subscriptions. I'm really trying to push for 1,000 subscribers. I'm gonna keep pushing out content, and I'm trying to have regular shorts as well. I'll see you guys next time. Thanks, bye.